And we are now to the gentleman I didn't know when I started this job, but thankfully I learned about him, and he's been a wonderful partner with the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Justin Hancock.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon, everybody. Justin Hancock. I'm the Director of Recreation Grants and Policy at the South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. And just real quick about our agency. Of course, we own and operate the state's now more than 47 state parks. We also market South Carolina as a travel destination, both domestically and internationally. We're home to the state's film office, which is fascinating and not as well known as it should be, and we provide assistance to local communities for tourism and recreation development. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the R and PRT. Uh, for this group, I think I picked the three most relevant grant programs out of our menu. We have a total of 8 programs that we administer, but I've got 2 construction-based and then 1 marketing grant program that I think will probably be the most appropriate and relevant for this crowd. First one being a state-funded grant program. That's the Undiscovered South Carolina program. That is for bricks and mortar construction of publicly owned tourism attractions. So the attraction has to be owned by a unit of local government, either a county, city, or a special purpose district in some cases. And just a note there, just a caveat, it has to be owned by a local government, and that is who has to apply for the grant. That does not mean it has to be managed by that local government. In fact, we've done several projects in which a local government owns the property, they own the building, but that attraction is actually managed a lot of times by a 501c organization, and that is perfectly okay. To qualify for that grant, the project has to be in an area that collects less than $900,000 in state accommodations tax. And if you're curious, how do I know whether my area collects less than $900,000? You can actually find that information on our agency website, scprt.com, under the research page. We have treasurer's reports that come out every year that show you exactly how much each town, city, county collect each year. This is a one-to-one matching grant. And like a lot of grants, these are all reimbursement based. So you have to spend the money up front once you get your grant award, and then you're reimbursed. It is possible on most of these to do partial reimbursements as work is completed. Grant range for this is between $100,000 and $200,000. And it can be everything from creating new attractions to renovating existing attractions and facilities. And there really is no set type of attraction we're looking for here. And just to show you an example of the types of projects we have funded that have successfully closed out, it's everything from the Garvin Garvey House, which was mentioned earlier by my colleague Brad, to not Rev War related, but the BMX pump track up in Rock Hill. We recently completed a project in Landrum. They restored a Pullman car and turned that into a rail and history museum. And again, that's another example of one. Town of Landrum owns that facility. It's run by a local 501c organization. So that's the Undiscovered program. I don't have an exact date for when that will open up next year. We've already closed and awarded for this fiscal year, but generally it's around late spring when we open up for applications for that. Next program I'll talk about is the Recreational Trails Program. That's a federal program administered by our agency. That is for exactly what it sounds like, the development of recreational trails, whether they be hiking, walking, biking, equestrian, and even motorized trails are allowed under this program. The grant range is between $10,000 and $100,000 for these construction projects. That is an 80-20 reimbursable grant. And I will say with Undiscovered, the match is a hard cash match. RTP is actually very generous. So that match can be in kind, it can be staff, volunteer labor, it can be equipment usage. There are a lot of allowances for RTP. In terms of applicant eligibility, local, state, federal agencies, as well as nonprofit organizations. And this one actually does allow for, in some cases, for-profits to apply. And again, this can be for the construction of new recreational trails. It can be for the restoration of existing trails, and it will also pay for the construction of some trail facilities, including trailhead facilities and restrooms. Now, I will say, just as sort of an insider tip, RTP is highly competitive. We have about $800,000 to award for non-motorized trails every year. That means we can do roughly about 8 projects per year. We'll get anywhere from 30 to 40 applications. So again, highly competitive. Undiscovered is also very competitive. With RTP, I mentioned that it will pay for the construction of trail facilities. If there is not new trail construction associated with the development of that trail facility, the odds of it competing well are very low based on the scoring criteria. So that's something I like to stress to folks. If you're looking to do a trailhead facility, that's great. We want to support you. If you've got new trail construction that's going with it, that does increase your likelihood of funding. And again, just a few examples of different types of trail projects that have been funded through this program. And probably the most relevant and appropriate here is Fort Fairlawn. They constructed a recreational trail on the property. It completed a couple of years ago. And another good example of that applicant was the Lord Berkeley Conservation Trust, so a 501c organization. And the last one I'll talk about is the Tourism Advertising Grant. This is for purchasing paid advertising space. It has to run at least outside of a 50-mile radius. It is open to destinations, so that can be cities, counties, again, as well as attractions and events can apply for these funds. This one will actually open up for applications in December, probably around early to mid-December. And again, it pays for the paid advertising placement. So not the creation of an ad, not the development and all that, but the actual placement. So what it costs to put that billboard up or to run this ad in this magazine or on this website, what that paid space costs. And you can see the examples down there. That is what the tourism advertising grant will pay for. In terms of match, because every once in a while we like to make things really complicated, um, there are a couple of different matching categories. There's the one-to-one, and it really depends on what you're applying as and then how much you're applying for. So for an example, if you're an event or a festival and you're applying for tag and your request is less than $3,000, you can come in at that one-to-one rate. Attractions up to 20,000, the one-to-one rate. If you're asking for a higher amount, you're going to come in at a 2-to-1 rate or a 33% match. And that's just a little bit about these three programs. What I would encourage everybody to do, if any of these look interesting, or if you'd like to look at the other programs that SCPRT administers, go to our agency website, scprt.com, to the grants page. On each one of these grants, they have their own page. The grant guidelines are there. So we tell you exactly what types of projects each grant program allows for. We even tell you how these different grant programs are evaluated and scored. So wealth of information on this website. And then we also have an e-newsletter that you can sign up for on our agency's main webpage. And if you see the arrow pointing down there at the bottom, we have one specific for grants. So if that's all you're interested in, you don't want to know the rest of the tourism news of the state, you just want to know about grants, you can click specifically on that one. And then you'll receive an email periodically that lets you know when these grant opportunities are opening up, when awards have been made, that type of information. And I'll end with contact information for everybody in the grants office and would encourage everybody, go to our webpage, look at the guidelines, read those first. And then if you have a project or a potential project, call us, talk to us about it long before you start filling out an application. Don't wait until the application cycle to start thinking about it, having these conversations. Call us, talk to us about it. We're even willing, if it's a construction-based project, to come to you and look at the property and talk about the possibilities. And sometimes it may be something that we can help with. If it's not something we can help with, we can maybe steer you to one of our colleagues or another agency that can provide you resources. Thank you.